In 1916, the battlefield changed forever. Before tanks, war was trapped in mud, trenches, barbed wire, and machine gun fire. Armies could move millions of men, but sometimes they could not move a few hundred meters. Then came the British Mark I, slow, loud, uncomfortable, and almost impossible to ignore. It was not elegant, it was not reliable, but it was something completely new. A moving steel box built to cross trenches and survive bullets. The early Mark I and Mark IV looked more like armored ships crawling across land than modern tanks. Their huge rhomboid tracks wrapped around the entire body because the first problem was not speed, it was survival. These machines were built to climb over the broken world of the First World War. Then the Renault FT changed the idea completely. It was tiny compared to the British giants, but it introduced the layout that tanks still use today. Driver in the front, engine in the back, and a rotating turret on top. That one idea was more important than size. The tank was no longer just a moving bunker. It became a weapon that could look, turn, and fight in any direction. After the war, armies started experimenting. The Whippet showed that armor could be faster. The Vickers Medium tried to make tanks useful for regular armies. The tiny Carden-Loyd tankette proved that even small armored vehicles could influence the future. It inspired designs across Europe and beyond. By the 1930s, the race had begun. The Soviet T-26 was simple, cheap, and produced in huge numbers. The BT-5 was built for speed, using Christie's suspension ideas that shaped Soviet thinking. Germany started smaller with the Panzer I, a light machine gun tank that was never meant to dominate heavy battles. But it trained the crews and commanders who would later change armored warfare. Then came the Second World War. The Panzer III and Panzer IV were part of Germany's early blitzkrieg image. Fast movement, radio coordination, and concentrated armored attacks. The British Matilda II was slow, but in North Africa, its armor made it a nightmare for early enemy guns. For a moment, it looked almost untouchable. Then the T-34 appeared. Its sloped armor, wide tracks, and battlefield practicality shocked Germany. It was not perfect, but it forced everyone to think differently. The Sherman answered with something just as important: production. It was not always the most feared tank one-on-one, but it could be built, shipped, repaired, and replaced in massive numbers. In war, that matters. Germany responded with the Panther, powerful, sharp, and dangerous. Then came the Tiger II, a massive heavy tank that looked terrifying but showed a brutal truth. Bigger is not always better. Weight, fuel, maintenance, and reliability can defeat even the most intimidating machine. The Soviet IS-3 closed the war with a new silhouette. Its pike nose and rounded turret looked futuristic in 1945. At victory parades, it sent a clear message. Armored warfare was entering a new era. After World War II, the tank evolved again. The Centurion became one of the most important post-war designs, serving for decades and proving that a balanced tank could outlive trends. The AMX-13 took a different path, small, fast, and unusual, with an oscillating turret and auto-loader. The M46 Patton showed America adapting to the Cold War. The T-54 became one of the most produced and copied tanks in history, spreading across continents and conflicts. The 1950s and 1960s were no longer about just building tanks. They were about doctrine. The M48 Patton looked rounded and heavy, a symbol of early Cold War armor. The Leopard one went in the opposite direction. Lighter, faster, focused on mobility. The M60 continued the American Patton line, while the T-62 introduced smoothbore firepower into mass service. Then the battlefield expanded. The BMP-1 was not just a tank-like vehicle. It changed the role of infantry by carrying soldiers under armor while still fighting alongside tanks. The Chieftain brought a huge gun and strong protection, but also gained a reputation for mechanical problems. The Martyr showed how NATO armies were taking infantry fighting vehicles seriously. By the 1970s, the modern main battle tank was taking shape. The T-72 was rugged, compact, and produced in large numbers. The Leopard 2 brought Western armor into a new generation. The M1 Abrams arrived with a turbine engine and a completely different battlefield personality. Fast, heavy, expensive, and highly advanced. The 1980s and 1990s added specialization. The M2 Bradley carried infantry and anti-tank missiles. The Challenger 1 became famous after Desert Storm. Israel's Merkava put crew protection first, with the engine placed at the front. France's Leclerc pushed automation and speed. Russia's T-90 kept the Soviet low-profile tradition alive, while China's Type 99 showed that armored development was now truly global. By the 2000s, armored warfare was no longer just about tracked steel. The Striker proved that wheeled armor could move fast across modern battlefields. The Leopard 2A6 pushed precision firepower further. Merkava Mark IV focused on keeping crews alive in cities and missile-heavy combat zones. And the K2 Black Panther showed how suspension, sensors, and mobility could become part of a new high-tech generation. Then came the next question. What comes after the traditional tank? The T-14 Armata introduced an unmanned turret and a completely new silhouette. The Puma IFV showed that infantry vehicles could become almost as advanced as main battle tanks. The Namer proved that sometimes protection matters more than firepower, and the Centauro II showed that wheeled gun systems still have a serious role. The latest Abrams, Leopard 2, A7V, and Challenger 3 are not pure revolutions. They are survivors. Older names rebuilt for a new battlefield. The KF-51 Panther and Abrams X point toward experimental ideas. Bigger guns, smaller crews, hybrid systems, and smarter sensors. And finally, MGCS points to the future. Not just one tank, but a connected battlefield system. Crews, unmanned vehicles, drones, sensors, and artificial intelligence working together. From the Mark I crawling through mud in 1916 to next-generation concepts in 2026, armored warfare has always asked one brutal question. How do you keep moving forward when the battlefield is built to stop you?